Okay, let's get started today. Welcome to week 9. I hope you're all holding up. We are at obviously an important point in the class, and I want to make a couple announcements today that'll make sure we're all heading in the same direction. The paper, has anybody located their paper grade on Turnitin? Okay, so those are officially out. Wow, that spread fast. That was an email that I sent out, Teresa sent out only a few minutes ago. So those grades are available. They're posted. You all did well, and you're, as was the case with the midterm, probably did as well as any class in recent memory. So nice work. If you want to request a regrade, I encourage you to look at the syllabus. There's really specific instructions on the syllabus on how to do that. And so please take a look on that before you proceed. So that is, so now your midterm grades are in, obviously, your paper grades are in. So now we have this last bit of the grade. I think it's 40% of your grade still. So we'll be working on that in the next couple days here. Let me now tell you about how we're going to spend the next 4 classes together. Obviously, a week from this Thursday is the final exam. In this room, regular class time, bring a pencil, try to show up on time so we can sort of move through that in an orderly and efficient way. You did a fantastic job on that on the midterm, by the way. So that'll be a week from Thursday. A week from today, next Tuesday, week 10, Tuesday, we'll have a kind of a review class. I'll summarize some issues. If there are any remaining things to cover, I'll deal with them then. But that'll be next Tuesday. This week, our 2 classes, I actually want to do them a little bit differently than it says on the syllabus, okay? So the syllabus says that today will be the second half of Chapter 12, and Thursday will be Chapter 13. It's actually not how I'm going to do it. Instead, I am not going to lecture on Chapter 13. It's on the exam, though, but it's only based on the chapter itself. So that is that much less material that you need to go over. Just to repeat that, Chapter 13 I will not be lecturing on, but the material itself in the book will be on the exam. What I am going to do instead is take the lecture that was for today, the Chapter 12 prevention lecture, which is basically primary and secondary prevention. Now you know the lingo from our last class. That'll be on Thursday. Okay, so today the slides that maybe you've already pulled up, we're going to talk about those on Thursday in great detail. It's important, it's interesting, it'll be on the exam, etc. Today I want to do something a little different, which is take a moment to not just rush through the idea that couples therapy is interesting, it works in the ways that we talked about in class last week, but I want to show you a couple examples of couples therapy today. There's something else I want to tell you. Before I get to that, the terms for the final exam have been circulated, so I hope you have all received that document now. So basically, I took the final exam, cut out all the connecting words, all the other words that are not so important, and left all of the terms that, or at least 90% of the terms that are going to be on the exam. I might make a few very slight modifications, but nothing serious. You now have virtually all of the text that's going to appear on the final exam. Okay, so those terms should be a way of guiding your studying a little bit, keeping in mind that not all of those terms are going to be correct answers. They're just on the test, okay? So you should not be surprised now by any of the terms or the words or the ideas that are on the exam. So I hope that sort of gives you a lot more focus in what you can be looking at for the exam. Also, Emily has identified times for the review sessions, and those have been circulated by email. I hope you received those by now. And also, I think over the weekend, or maybe it was Sunday or something, I sent you my extended office hours, okay? So I'm going to, for example, Monday afternoon, Right before Emily's second review session, I will be in my office just hanging out, waiting for you to come by and see me. And in addition, I have my regular office hours this week and next week. And I also will respond to short emails that you send me. I can totally answer questions that you send my way. What about this? Do I have to know this? Those sorts of questions, if they're specific and clear, I can respond to them very quickly. So I can totally take care of those. So please feel free to do that. And over the weekend, I will try to be as responsive as possible to those. And if none of those options work, or if they don't work completely for you, send me an email. We'll work at a time. I want to make sure that you can find me and take advantage of my time in whatever way gets you closer to the material. So I hope you're getting closer to what the final is going to look like. In terms of format, it'll look very familiar to you. Okay? Any questions about that before I move on to where we are today? Just logistics on the exam, our availability. Yeah, right here.
You mentioned that you're going to do more like Psych-based sessions.
Yeah, I'm going to do that a week from today. So in class time, we'll talk a little bit about how to strategize for this kind of exam. Okay? And I might even sort of dip into some of the midterm questions to bring you through that. So it won't just be that on Tuesday, but I'll definitely hit some of that strategy kind of material. And by the way, you may have really good strategies for how you take exams, and maybe for many of you, you did really well. I'm just going to offer some alternative perspectives from the side of the person who's sort of writing the exam and how to think about that. Good question. Other questions? Okay, so we're at this really interesting juncture in the course where we think about the basic research and how we transition from basic research to saying, okay, what do you got? Someone shows up at your office and they're not doing so well. Or you see statistics in the paper about divorce rates, or people being unhappy in their relationships, or struggling to co-parent with their children, or whatever that might be. We have this applied need. The understanding of intimate relationships is not just interesting, it's really interesting, and I hope you've seen that over these past 8 weeks. It's not just interesting, but it's important. We have to figure out a way to say, oh, this is a real need within our communities, within our own homes. And we have to say, is there anything about that basic research that translates over into how we can address people who are struggling, or who we have a sense might struggle at some point in their relationship? So we're trying to sort of cross that gulf, right? We're trying to say, oh, right, there's real people struggling. How can we use all of that interesting information to actually make important changes in their lives? And so today, we're sort of right in between the therapy lecture and the prevention lecture. And what I want to show you is a case study of a couple, bless you, a case study of a couple, Monica and Phil, and they're crazy in love, and we're going to hear a little bit about how they met each other, and then we're going to hear about the fact that he had an affair with another woman, and then we're going to see what happens in the course of their therapy. And it's pretty interesting, as you might imagine. It involves trust and getting back together and finding a way to communicate. And it will have echoes of a lot of the ideas that you've heard about. And then there's one exquisite example of sort of a realization and a sort of a poignant moment when the wife realizes something distinct about her husband, and it totally changes her view of him. So we'll get to that in a minute. And that'll run, that'll be fairly long. I want you to get sort of a real sense of that perspective from the therapy point of view. The first clip I want to show you, though, is the one that I queued up on last Thursday, but didn't have enough time to show you. This is about emotion-focused therapy. Okay, emotion-focused therapy. And it's just what you might think, which is, let's try to understand, let me as a therapist try to help you guys understand what emotions are spilling in between you and getting in the way of you two as a couple staying connected and being happy. As I indicated on Thursday, this couple is not really that distressed. It's really clear what the source of the problem is, and they're sort of united in the need to solve that problem. The second couple, Monica and Phil, they actually have a crisis in their relationship, a real crisis where he has really sort of overstepped the bounds of what both of them feel to be appropriate behavior in their relationship. There's a real betrayal. But this first case is really about emotion. And what you're going to see is the therapist, his name is Greenberg, Les Greenberg. Let me just verify that. Yeah, Leslie Greenberg. He is one of the originators of this kind of therapy, emotion-focused therapy. And this, it's important for you to understand this conceptually and not just see what happens in the therapist's office. Conceptually, what's going on, and Les Greenberg was one of the people who was really at the forefront of this kind of thinking, probably 15 years ago, which was the recognition, and I think I say this in the book, the idea that relationships really are more about bonds than about bargains. And that is a little bit of a slam against the social learning theory and the traditional behavioral couples therapy, which is, how can we just communicate better and treat one another better? The emotion-focused approach takes that one step further and says, let's not worry so much about changing people directly. Let's not worry so much about changing their communication. Let's worry about understanding the emotional exchanges that are happening within the relationship. And once we understand that, then the two partners will be in a different place in relation to one another. They'll see that the reasons why their partner is emoting in a certain way matter. And my understanding of your emotion really can elicit sympathy instead of hostility and antagonism, okay? So we're going to see how this therapist sort of deals with this issue, with this couple. The issue is really about the fact that they are living with, I think it's her parents, and that creates real friction for them. It's sort of a temporary situation for them. It is a financial issue for them, and they're sort of working their way out of being in her parents' house. But it creates problems for them because the parents are arguing all the time. And that, as you think about that, not only will you see this emphasis on emotion, but you should also be thinking that, that's a lot like chapter 11, right? That's a lot like context. This exact same couple in a very different living situation would have a different kind of relationship. They'd be in a very different place on this issue. Okay, so there's a little bit in the background, the chapter 11 material. You'll see stuff from chapter 8 about conflict. You'll see stuff from chapter 7 about relationship maintenance. And so let me take you through this. I'll stop talking because it's way more interesting than anything I can have to say. But it's all about emotion-focused therapy. Bless you. And there's something kind of funny in here, and I want to tell you about it. The therapist, Les Greenberg, even though he's world famous, he's a super famous guy. Like if you're in the therapy world, he's a big deal. He's also a little bit nervous in this video. And I think what that makes him do is say uh-huh a lot. So you're going to hear that, and you'll hear it a lot.
Well, I try.
Okay, so what do you see going on? What's he trying to do? Of all the ways, I mean, think about it. If you're a therapist, someone shows up in your office, you have a million theories, not a million. You have many alternatives, many options, different things to talk about, different things to choose, different kinds of information you can solicit, and they respond. You learn from them what their circumstances are. Initially, all therapists are going to go through what you saw at the very beginning, right? So tell me about your situation. How old are you guys? Siblings, tell me about that. Why is it you're in your parents' house? Were you always there? Who shows up on holidays? Just some descriptive things, right? But now, quickly, he's getting into the meat of the matter, the heart of what's going on from his theoretical point of view, right? So what's he hoping to achieve here? What's he want to do by focusing on emotion? Yeah.
For them to experience kind of like the softer emotions, like expressive vulnerability.
Yeah. He's really saying, okay, I get it. Your parents argue, you're at the table. Sounds bad. Sounds like they need therapy, by the way. So there they are, they're arguing, and you guys sort of absorb that. And she says, yeah, I just pick up on that. And they're careful. I mean, you can tell this is a very healthy couple. They're laughing at the beginning, they're smiling, they don't cut each other's speech off. Like, they're very respectful. This is not a bad relationship, but they're in a bad spot. And so the therapist then says, well, okay, in his head he's saying, okay, I got this problem, that the parents are arguing, they absorb this anger, and then they express that within themselves. They're careful to say, yeah, it doesn't happen all the time, but yeah, that happens. And eventually he says, okay, I get it. There's anger and there's frustration, and it leaves you guys further apart rather than closer. I get that. But tell me about what's going on inside you. But don't tell me about the anger. Like, I want to hear about the anger. Yeah, I get it. But what's underneath the anger? So how do you feel? And he helps her to say, wow, so you must feel, powerless maybe. Yeah, I feel powerless. They're my parents. I don't know what to do. I'm the negotiator. That's the role in my family. But I can't sort of get them to behave. And so I feel powerless. And guess what? I take it out on Zach. I tell Zach that you sort of don't do a lot of things that you say you're going to do. And Zach goes, oh my God, that's my father talking to me, because he told me to always finish anything I started. And now my wife, the person who loves me, is responding and picking up on exactly that hot button issue. Guess what? Now I feel angry. Now I'm angry. Now we've got the angry parents, the angry daughter, and now me, the angry husband, and now that's not a good situation. So I usually just take off. Like, that's my thing. I just take off. I just want to not be in that situation, right? By the way, that might have something to do with gender, right? Like we learned in chapter 4. So the therapist says, I get it, lots of anger. And he says, but you, the female, you feel kind of powerless. And that's where your anger. Do you ever talk about that? The powerlessness of it with Zach? No, I never really. I just get angry at him. And then the therapist says to Zach, so how do you feel? I feel bad, sad, angry, frustrated, like he's just a volcano of negativity, right? It's just terrible. And then the therapist says, so there are feelings underneath that, right? There are feelings about how you're not really living up to the standards that you want to live up to. You feel inadequate. You feel like you're sort of cut loose and abandoned. And then the idea is now to say, I get it, you're angry. Inside your anger are vulnerable, softer feelings. What we might think of as the primary emotions, whereas the anger is a secondary emotion. I see this primary emotion underneath there, and that's where I need you guys to connect, right? And what's interesting is that even though they're living these moments on a weekly, daily basis, they come in talking about it in a sort of a descriptive way, as if you were reading about it in a newspaper, right? And then what the therapist does is he says, let me take you a little bit deeper. Let me help you to understand it in a slightly different way. Let me ask the questions of you that maybe you don't ask of yourself, or maybe that you don't ask of each other, because the situation is so bad when you're in the middle of it, or when it's over, the last thing you want to do is jump back in and talk about it. So as a therapist, I want to come in, look through this lens that my theory allows me to use, and ask the questions that sort of extract those feelings, right? You see that? It's pretty cool. It's really interesting to see the theory so clearly articulated by Les Greenberg at the beginning here, and now we see the sort of the enactment of that theory and where he's going to go. Any questions about that? Ideas about how that might work? Okay. Let me show you another couple now. This is going to be Monica and Phil, a younger couple, a bunch of kids. They live in like Brooklyn or New York or something. he has clearly screwed up, and this relationship is in trouble. And what's really hard about this moment in therapy is both of them come in saying, he's the bad guy. He's the one who screwed up, and she's the one who's sort of on the hot spot. It's really sort of an uncomfortable, I don't disagree with it as an approach at all, but it's sort of uncomfortable to think she's the one who has to trust him? Doesn't he have to sort of earn that trust somehow? And that is a really sort of discomforting aspect of this case. So I just want to point that out. There is an unfairness to that. And if you're feeling that, I'm feeling it too. It sort of seems like a magic wand, right? And it's important. The lesson that you take away is not, oh, when I get married, I'll have sex with other people, and then I'll just get a really good therapist, wipe the slate clean, and my wife has forgiven me, and life goes on, and I can be in a PBS documentary. Hey, that'll be good. It doesn't quite work like that, and there's a couple things to keep in mind. One is, for all of the people who had an affair and came home and had that discovered, and their partner said, here's your clothes, get out. They're already on the front lawn, see you later. Deal is over. Those people don't show up in the videos, right? So that's a real phenomenon, and this is a special case. This is also a special case because it's almost as though it's sort of therapy on fast forward, right? So you don't see the 25 or 30 or 40 hours of therapy that sort of led to this revelation and the discovery. And so I understand there's an artificial quality to that, and we have to take that as true and likely. But what other things did you see here? What other questions did you have about this therapist's approach compared to the first therapist? Yeah.
I noticed, and I'm pretty sure that it was the same lesson, but when he revealed that he liked basketball because it was his only memory of his dad, that was like, I think one of the first times that she started to sit closer to him. So I think it was really interesting that as soon as he revealed that vulnerability, it was such a big impact. Because the previous therapy lesson, they were so far apart, and she was in the front and he was in the back of the couch. And it's just, you could see that the power of the vulnerability and expressing it what it does. Right.
There's a really big difference between someone who says, I'm going to talk about sports all the time, and then your partner says, you're totally a dope for talking about sports all the time. And then the person's, and so anger, right? I get that. And then the person says, because here's what basketball means to me. It means this fundamentally core experience that I had right before my dad got killed. That's what it means to me. And the wife then says, oh, different experience. And now I'm going to be close to you. And, again, we have to be careful of the magic wand here. It doesn't work like that. But that is the idea that I'm trying to convey. And I think it came up in the earlier clip as well, right? This idea that, my reaction to you, the annoyance that I have, whereas I can say, what is up with you and your dopey metaphors about sports? I can say, I've never asked this of you before, but you talk about sports a lot. What's up with that? I can be curious instead of hostile and judging, right? And so when they say, let's shift toward respectful conversation, what it does is it allows those non-judgmental conversations to happen and allows those sorts of experiences to be brought out into their daily routine. Somebody had a question over here? Yeah.
I was just curious. Phil could have avoided a lot of arguments if he had just mentioned what basketball means to him before. And I was wondering why he waited 5 years.
So why didn't Phil say, when I'm saying X, this means Y? Why didn't he just avoid that argument to begin with? Yeah.
I think he really needed validation. Especially he got the understanding when she realized why he was so obsessed with basketball, but then I feel like he had his turnaround when she kind of said, okay, you are a good husband, you are a good father, and that gave him kind of the side he needed to say, okay, I do have motivation to do this.
Yeah, right. So there's something about getting validated for that. This intimacy process model, 100%, right? So disclosure, response to disclosure, a feeling that I'm validated, right? And not just that I'm validated, but that I'm validated about how I'm able to live my life now as a father in a way that sort of connects back with the fact that my father couldn't do these things. So I'm actually doing something for my kids that my dad wasn't able to do for me, kind of because of my dad. And that's pretty deep stuff, right? So to be able to have that brought out and validated, maybe he didn't even himself know the depth of the feelings around that, or never really, who in our daily lives, riding up and down an elevator, sits down and really thinks hard about those things, right? And so being in the room with a neutral third party can really help to bring that out. And it also helps your partner to be neutralized a little bit as well, to hear these new ideas. Someone else had a comment up front? Yeah.
So this might have, you commented on the hot seat thing earlier, and that might just be an editing choice, but I noticed with the second video, it seemed like the problem they were trying to solve was her anger as opposed to why he cheated in the first place.
Yeah.
How they can secure the
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah, so what's up with not dealing with the fact that he screwed around on her and what was behind that?
Yeah, because it seems like at the end he was just unsatisfied with the fact that she doesn't trust him, which I feel like she was valid to do, but they didn't talk about his problem, or his problem with her that led to the.
Yeah, so at the very end, she's talking about, and it's really kind of stark, and it got my attention, which is this idea that she says, I sort of led him, I played a role in that.
And it seemed very destroying because she was talking about how she doesn't trust him, but that was not an issue before he cheated.
Yeah.
We don't know what happened.
I think the missing link here, the part that we're not hearing about, is that, and this, I'll say it because I'm not saying it because I believe it, but I think it's sort of what's happening behind the scenes here, which is the story that they want us to hear is she criticized him a lot. Criticized. Nothing was good enough. He was working all the time. Work. Just busy all the time. And A plus B equals sex with your secretary. I think that was the narrative that they want us to believe. I think there has to be more to it than that. It's many people, including this woman, could say, I don't care how much I criticize you. It doesn't, or even how much stress you're under, you sort of broke a very basic agreement in our relationship. So we don't really get to hear a lot of that equation, how that sort of added up to become him screwing around, and how she made sense of that. So I agree that's a missing element in this. Other thoughts, other reactions? Yeah, up in the back. Yeah. Everything worked out perfectly, right?
It was this sort of similar couples going through this form of self-expansion, right?
Yeah. We're learning new things about each other.
What happens after that period? That honeymoon, that in-cloud phase dies out. Other statistics after a successful process through couples therapy, how well it maintains itself. Yeah,
that's the question, right? Is not just are you getting that good boost, a month afterwards, 2 months afterwards, but where are you, 1, 2, 3, 5 years later? How do you sort of, when he has to go back to work and has to work a lot or goes through a period where he's really scrambling, and we saw this with Frank and Nadine, right? So now let's imagine, I'm just making this up, that one of their kids becomes sick or her mom becomes sick and now she, the mom, has to go to Florida or somewhere. So now what happens, right? How do you sort of sustain these lessons when it's much harder to sustain them? Every case is going to be different, right? Most therapists would be more than willing to say, when you get to those spots, call me. We can get back on track. I know you guys have the basic foundation. You just need sort of some reworking of that, right? So you could imagine that if they were doing pretty well now and they were able to sustain that for a few months and then sort of ran into a situation that was really hard for him to deal with. It wasn't him screwing around, but was another big life event that became disruptive for them. That it wouldn't take that much time in a meeting to say, let's just get back to the basics. And I'm here, I'm available by telephone, we can do that if that's helpful. So that's sort of how, as a therapist, you might see it, is not that it's just a one-shot deal and sorry, I won't see you again, but contact me, call me, like I'm available just like you would with a GP, right? If you had a general physician who you would see, right? And you would want to contact them. But I will want to, and I'll leave on this note, which is remember the slide that I showed in our last class, which was what happens between the 2-year success rate and the 5-year success rate of the different therapies, right? So make sure you understand that slide because that will be on the exam. A lot of gains hold, but some of them do slip back. So let's stop there and we'll talk about the second half of chapter 12.